Hello everyone. Let's just say I'm in a proper mood for this video. Okay. Hell hath no fury, alright? Now, it's the end of May and we're rounding out the Divine Feminine Energy event that Cortney over at Aries Witchcraft had hosted. And I've been playing on the sidelines. I made one video about the Divine Feminine and the Tarot, like going through the major arcana and kind of rewriting it and through like the Divine Feminine lens and or my personal take on it. But it wasn't a direct activity, right, for the event. I was just like going through it. I was inspired to do it by the event. And I've been playing on the sidelines, journaling and getting to know the Divine Feminine a little bit better, even though this is like a lifelong work for me, you know, constantly working with it. But I have really enjoyed the journaling prompts and the tarot spreads. And this one is really important to me because feminine, what I guess I would consider Divine Feminine rage, coincides for me with madness. Okay, there's some sort of dichotomy in my psyche for it. And to be honest, the madness and feral part of the divine and the feminine, okay, seems to get overlooked because of the shame and the guilt around that, around mental health, around societally acceptable behavior, like behavior itself. And, you know, I think Cortney talked about purity too, and purity culture and things like that. And those kinds of things send me into a rage anyway. I was thinking last night, I was kind of writing the prompts down and the spread questions down, and I got to thinking, you know, ironically, what do we do? You know, we're feminine people, okay? We women, what do we do when we get mad? I'm just making a generalization here, okay? But what do we do when we get mad, ironically? We clean, okay? I think that is so ironic. So instead of expressing our rage and our wrath and any other of the 7 deadly sins or any other heightened emotions by screaming into pillows and dancing it away and finding actual good rituals and healthy rituals for us to eradicate, to calm down and eradicate most of the rage, we just end up clean. I just end up cleaning. Like sometimes I get like, I call it smoke coming out of my ears. Like when I say, okay, smoke's coming out of my ears, you better run, okay? Because that means that I'm like at my highest of high. My stress hormones are at the absolute highest. And I'll just like, everyone will kind of leave me alone, right? And go into their rooms or whatever, just because I like my solitude when those things happen. When heightened emotions hit me like that and I don't really know how to control it, I like to control it myself without somebody like patting me on the back, or I don't know, that stuff annoys the crap out of me. So I tend to like everyone to just go away, and when they do, I end up cleaning. I end up getting the mop and the mop bucket out and mopping the, like really mopping, I mean elbow grease and that stuff, you know, baseboards and stuff, windows and mirrors. And one time I was so freaking mad about something, I can't remember now, and I got everything out of the refrigerator and the freezer, like everything. I just pulled everything out and like just deep clean. You need to do this stuff anyway, you know? But for some reason, I believe that this is some kind of conditioned response that, like, I think we do it because we see our moms doing it, you know? It's a way to hide our rage, right? Now it does, sometimes, most of the time I'll say that it's kind of effective in calming you down, you know? Like I get over there and I'm mad and I'm putting some elbow grease and washing the dishes or whatever. It does tend to put me in some kind of altered state where I can calm down. I can kind of blanken out the mind. So housework does that for me anyway, pretty much. But it's ironic because I believe that that's a conditioned response. And the feminine rage can be so gendered, I believe. I know that might be controversial to say, okay, but this is my opinion, that feminine rage is often gendered in societal conditioning and norms. So, but, okay, I just had that thought about, like, what do we do when we're mad? Most of us potter around or we clean something vigorously, you know, to within an inch of his life. I'll get all the cast iron skillets out and just, you know, season them. You just like scrub the out of them, and then you have to oil them and all that. You do something with a lot of steps, right? But you know, coping mechanisms and healthy modes of calming, grounding, and centering and things like that. There's, I do believe that my witchcraft does this for me. Like, my witchcraft allows me to, a place, a sacred place to come to that I can ground and center, and it becomes this kind of, I'm with the divine, I'm with my higher self, I'm with blah, 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 you know? And somehow I know I'm alone, I know I'm in that void of solitude, but I'm still with something else that's not present in this plane of existence, you know, that I can, okay. So somehow that, dropping damn cards. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just like chatting here. But I wrote Divine Feminine Rage down because what I want to speak to is that feminine rage, I believe, is a little bit different than divine feminine rage. Okay? Feminine rage is what women, okay? The rage of women and the, like I was saying, the societal letdown of acceptance when it comes to rage and madness and wildness and having an untamed nature. I'm an advocate, okay, for all that. And that's what feminine rage is for me, is where we give and give and give because we're taught that. And then the rage comes out when we should have taken, in instances where we should have taken it. So, but okay. Now, I was also thinking about Euripides, because when am I not thinking about a freaking ancient philosopher, playwright, okay? I was thinking about Euripides. Now, he wrote Medea, which is one of my a sacred text, because I work with Medea as a sacred archetype. And I was thinking about Medea and her rage and what she does and the moralistic ambiguity, all right, of her. Mm-hmm. But then I got to thinking of another play that Mr. Euripides wrote, okay, called The Bacchae, all right, with the Maenads, all right, them crazy, wild women that they were, all right. Now, they weren't divine, but I was just thinking about the Bacchae and the frenzied followers of Dionysus, okay? Wine, and they're like, Dionysus is riding a leopard, and there's this sacred, ritualized wildness about the Bacchae that I just absolutely fucking love. And it's not really about rage, but it's about like this kind of amorphous channeling, you know? And so that got me into the kind of mindset of like, let's go divine with it. Instead of just like feminine rage, let's go divine. And I thought, okay, well, of all of like the myth, right? Let's like get into myth a little bit. Myth for me has, of course, so much craziness, okay, in terms of like story and what they're trying to teach you morally and all that kind of stuff. And which is all fine and good. Okay, you just have to kind of know, you know, like what you're reading, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to kill my kids, you know, kind of stuff. All right. You know, I'm not going to kill my husband's new lover, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just know what has morphed with the times and what has not. But then I got to thinking, you know, of the stories that we have, the ones that have survived, what would be the basis of the divine feminine rage? So these are like the goddesses, and I would say the heavily revered spirits of the divine realm, okay? The divine feminine realm and the dark feminine realm. So these are all like the dark feminine goddesses, like Kali Ma, Lilith, even though she's not a goddess, okay, but whatever. Maybe possibly even Hecate, Persephone, Demeter, Hera. Did I already say her? I don't know. Zeus's wife. And then I wrote down, you know, like I take much stock in mythology about this, figuring out about the divine, right? Because ultimately they're pretty much unknowable, except for the personal relationship you have with whoever it is you work with. And so I take a lot of stock in mythology about getting to know my abstract spirits and deities and beings. But then I also adhere to like I have a pamphlet, not a pamphlet, but it's like a little note card up on my sacred space here of the 7 deadly sins on it, wherein I utilize the 7 deadly sins in my actual witchcraft as a way to embrace sin and to pull back, right? Like if I'm too lustful, or if I'm too ambitious towards something that I'm really envying, and it's not really something that is a deep desire or need. Like I don't need it, but I'm like I'm envious. You know, the green fairy of envy is just like circulating, stuff like that. I always look to that, and I'm like, what is the essence of all of this? And I think, am I to this? And I don't take myself too seriously with that. Okay, because sometimes, like I said, I like to embrace my sin, as in participating in Witch's Black Lent. If you're interested in that, check my videos on that. But, which is where you kind of invert the sins and use them to your advantage. So I do them kind of in this dualistic way, practice with them. But then when reading the myth of divinity, all right, like the gods, okay, you think, what is it that would have made the divine feminine in those stories rageful? Okay, like hell hath no fury, right? What's making them like raise cities down and enact these insane acts of retribution and vengeance and violence? Okay, so I wrote some down. Betrayal was the number one thing I wrote down, okay, because in most stories it's about betrayal. Betrayal absolutely everywhere, and that is such a dominant emotion of that feeling of betrayal. It's just like, oh. And then the second one I had was insults, right? Like if you're gonna insult the gods, they're gonna punish you, okay? It's not gonna be pretty. And then tragedy. So if they do it, they have a sacred feminine rage due to something that they've lost. Right? Like they've lost a child, like they've lost a son, they've lost their empire, okay, or something like that. Like they do it through sadness, right? So sadness, really tragedy, defilement, okay, so we all know the Medusa story, right? Things like that happen all the time. I mean, think of Arachne, right? Like she was turned into a spider. Actually, that was more of an envy story. But when the divine feminine is defiled, right? Which pushes the purity narrative. However, I do feel like there's still a place for defilement in the feminine, because it's really, defilement is, in my opinion, okay, defilement is about control, and it's about I really do think that defilement could come in this kind of narrative of the feminine being the second sex, as Simone de Beauvoir would have said, okay? So, but it does cause some rage in a lot of these stories, defilement, in some way or the other. Usually it's the victim who gets punished, which everyone, anyone that thinks that that's not weird is just crazy. Like, I don't understand those stories. Like, why is the victim punished? But, and we probably know why, but I'm not going to get into it here, okay? So, defilement, provocation, okay? So, like, you're going to, if they were provoked, right? So that, and all of these kind of stem from the 7 deadly sins, if you think about it, because there's envy, there's lust and defilement, lust and control, there's betrayal, there's insults and pride. Okay, there's lots of pride. So, and the provocation too could be a pride and like vanity thing. You know, you're like, they want to keep their status, so they get angry if someone wants to take that away from them, right? And most of these stories, I would think, the divine feminine has such, in a lot of them, the divine feminine has such a presence, right? But I got to, you know, we have to somehow, or do we? It's a question I want to ask, is do we have to separate human feminine rage and divine feminine rage? I want to make a video about spiritual shape-shifting, which is about the beast, the human, and the divine. So be on the lookout for that on the channel. I think that there's a lot of juicy stuff in that topic. So, I don't know, be on the lookout for that video. But do we have to somehow bridge the gap between the divine and human? Okay? Is there a gap? Is there even a bridge? These cards are... Okay, whoever made this version of the Dark Goddess Tarot was a fucking idiot. God. This thing is almost you can't do anything with it. You just hardly can't. Okay? It's so big, it's so thick, it's too tall. Like, the OG version was so much better. Like, even if you had it this big, you could have made it slightly thinner, but I know you couldn't because you added gilding onto the damn thing. Ugh, I hate this version. I hate this version. But anyway, so basically, back to what I was going to say. What is there even a bridge? Okay, is it because we're mirrors of the divine? In my opinion, we're mirrored in that. Then yes, feminine rage could be seen as some sort of mirror to divine rage. But what really, I believe divinity to be so void of human constructs that I find so much chaos and void in divinity that I find it hard to place human sort of human emotions onto them. So divine feminine rage to me would look like something that was abnormal that happened in the universe, on a universal scale. Like nature maybe too. Like I do think of divine feminine rage and like the way nature it does what it's gonna do. It has this sacred vocation about it. Like a wave is gonna form and it's gonna, you know, if that's a tsunami, it's a tsunami, right? But it's gonna do what it has to do, and there's so much little intrinsic little strings and webs that connect it that made what could have been a wave a tsunami. Okay, scientifically, but in this kind of Gaian look at divinity, or the divine feminine, really, what would constitute as her rage? Like, think of all the things that she births every day and that die. And it's really not about that. Like, you know, I have a small front porch, okay? And there's like an alcove in the top of it, right? And every spring, a mama bird puts her nest in one of the corners, okay? So every time you walk out the door, she was like, and then just flies at you like she's just, I don't know, like she's some side of, like she just wants you away from her nest, even though it's way up there. But she kind of flies at you, flies about, lets you know that she's there and stuff. And it's funny, but I know she's protective, but it's like, it's a million places in my yard for a nest. But she had 2 baby birds, okay, 2 eggs. And then one day, all of a sudden, you could hear the baby birds, right, chirping, really, really small, okay. And so I knew, I was like, okay, the babies were born. And the mama was just here all the time. Okay. Well, then one day we were out on the front porch. I like to go out there and watch thunderstorms. Okay. So me and one of my sons were out there looking at the thunderstorm, and I just happened to look up, and I saw both of the babies, and they were grown. Looked like they were, if not almost grown. And I was like, huh, the mama's just sitting there. You know, I thought it was the mama. And my son was like, I don't think that's the mama. Because it's a little, you know, there's two of them, and they're the same size. And I thought, okay, so maybe it's the babies. The mama never came back. The mama never came back. No one touched the nest, no, but she left, right? And my husband was out there a few days later, like 2 days later, and saw their first flight out of the nest. They both, well, one jumped and landed on the ground, and then fluttered on the ground for a second, and then took off, right? And then the second one did the same thing. So he witnessed their first flight out of the nest. And we talked about it for a minute, how beautiful something like that is. And I thought, you know, the mama has not been around, because I haven't seen her, like, you know, because I've got a window that kind of points out there. And I said, I haven't seen the mama in like days. And he was like, she leaves them there so that hunger will initiate their instincts. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we're both pretty, you know, planet Earth type people, so we kind of knew that was what was going on, even though it's to humans that's kind of sad, right? And I'm sorry about this tangent, but still. So he witnesses their first flight, and he said, you know, hunger finally took them. It finally took them to where they had no other choice. Mama's not coming back with a worm, okay? Mama's not coming back at all. And then instead of this despair, right? Instinct. And that's the rub too, is the difference between despair and instinct. And instinct doesn't always mean hope. It means survival. And no one knows that best than the divine feminine. And the mama will never see those babies again. And she won't care. She won't care to. It's not because it's not about that. Ugh, and it's crazy for us to think about stuff like that. Also, when it comes to in the animal kingdom, does anyone else find that it's kind of been backwards lately? Okay, most, and again, I'm going to gender things, so bear with. Most males in the animal kingdom are the brightly colored ones. Okay, birds, fish, certain kind of mammals. There's this. They're brightly colored to attract the females and to ward off predators from the young, yada, 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 okay? And, like, I have a family of cardinals that live in the bamboo. And the male is just beautiful, vibrant red, okay? And the female is brown, right? Don't you think we've kind of gone backwards? Like, somehow, where did it turn around to where the women are the ones that have to be brightly colored and beautiful to attract the mates or whatever they... Now, beauty isn't, and being beautiful and wearing makeup and gilding yourselves and glamoring yourselves isn't necessarily about catching a mate anymore. Thank goodness. It's about, you know, it's more so about beauticious autonomy, which is great. But we still have these kinds of guilt and shame about, like, body shaming and stuff about women. And I think that is so crazy that in most, and I mean most, of the animal kingdom, the males are the brightly colored ones, you know? That's actually where dandies came from. They looked at the animal kingdom. I mean, well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there either. I've already been on for 25 minutes. It seems like everyone that was doing this and was sharing a video was, like, talking in the beginning before doing their spread. But I'm going to go ahead and do my spread, okay? But leave your comments below about the animal kingdom and, like, the male-female weirdness of beautification. Okay, so I'm going to do the Hail Hath No Fury spread. I'm not going to do the Lilith spread on camera. But I'm going to split it up, though. Okay, so question number 1. I'm going to put my notebook over here because I'm not going to have any room over here. Question number 1 is the current divine feminine archetype. I'm going to use the Dark Goddess Tarot. Oh, excuse me. And then for the other 4 questions, I'm going to use the mother piece. Okay. So, and I've been shuffling, but I'm going to shuffle some more if I can get my fucking hands around this deck. Ugh, gotta break your freaking fingers to get around this deck. Oh. So. There's been so many good responses to this week in this Divine Feminine event. So much vulnerability and so much sadness. God. Alright, let's just pull a card. Alright, who'd I get? Scotty. Scotty is the Amazon of air. I'm so glad that I got a court card. Oh my god, else. For some reason, they just work. You know, they just work with me. Yeah, so this would be technically the Page of Swords. Ooh, okay. Let me see her. Let y'all see her. I don't know what I'm saying. Hone the skills that lead to freedom. Yes, because like what I was saying, okay, I'm a feral witch bitch. Norse goddess of winter and hunting. It's like the Norse Artemis. But forgive me if I'm wrong about that. Skadi is a beautiful goddess of winter in the northern land of Scandinavia, a land named for her. Her name means shadow, for only winter has the power to darken the sun. Oh, God, Ellen Lawrence Prince can write, man. Bearing her sharp spear and piercing arrows and accompanying by her beloved wolves. Yes, yes, yes. Why didn't you draw any wolves on here? I guess because they're just companions at the end of the day, you know. It's about the goddess. A strong and ancient giantess. Yes. Okay. All right. Now it goes into the little... Okay, now when Skadi, hope I'm pronouncing that right. When Skadi appears, independence requires authenticity, not isolation. Yet being self-sufficient keeps you true. There is joy in discovering how capable you can become. This is about the coming, okay? This is about the coming. Love that. Okay, so I'm going to put Skadi down. And then I'm going to shuffle the mother piece. Y'all like my hair? This is my feminine rage hair, too. God. Alright, now the second question is, how do I internalize my anger? How do I internalize my anger? You know, stop, sorry. Most of the people that I saw doing this Hell Hath No Fury, anytime they're doing a spread video, they ask the questions like as they're shuffling. I love that. It's like for some reason I love hearing you guys whisper to the cards. So I'm gonna do it for you so you know how it sounds. How do I internalize my anger? How do I internalize my anger? How do I internalize my anger? Okay. Seven of Discs. I love the melon, the use of melons as this kind of fecundity in this card, you know, because when I think of the Seven of Discs, I'm thinking about this kind of like retrospective introspection, but this also this cultivation, right, which we see in this card. How do I internalize it? I use it to create. I use it to create. I use it. I like use my, I'll use my heightened emotions, all of them, in creative endeavors. And I tend to like eat them and then become pregnant with them and then birth them. And that's what I see happening in this card. Yes, never fail me, mother piece. All right. What is the deep root of my anger? Deep root. What is the deep root of my anger? What is the deep root of my anger? Eight of discs. Wow. Okay. I feel like anger and working, like I was saying, like, you know, like when we clean when we're angry, right? It's about work. For some reason, I'm getting this like feeling, and the cards 7 and 8 of discs. It's like I must, but it could also be a perpetual cycle, right? Like I use my anger, I'm fueled by my sacred heightened emotions, and that can get me a lot of places ambitiously, but I find that that can also lead me into even a more masculine mindset, you know. And this 8 of discs is beautiful. They're weaving, and it's just about this communal work, right? But it's also about like I can channel and work towards these things that I want to birth, and use my heightened emotions as fuel, but don't forget to ask for help. Don't forget to work in this kind of tribe, in this tribal way, the communal way, and get some stuff off my back. So the deep root might be that I don't know how to ask for help very often. I tend to be like I can do it all, and then get burnt out, and then get angry, and then it's just a perpetual cycle. So all right. How does society feed how does society lead to my anger and guilt? What does society do to and for my anger and guilt? How does society fit in with my anger and guilt? Card for society and divine feminine rage and their relationship. Cannot make this crap up, you guys. I got the World card. You know why? Because that is the world we live in. We're living in that world, and we have to make another world. Somehow we have to remind ourselves that we're interconnected, and that what may constitute as patriarchy and divine feminine rage, how is it perpetuating narratives that won't stop, you know? Like if you think about all the written text of all the divines that we know of currently, in 1,000, 1,500 years, what is written about the divinity that we like know now? You know, how is that game of telephone going to affect the future generations? Okay, that's what society needs to think about. Is how is what we're doing now perpetuating narratives that could potentially be written and still harming the future generations? World card. for the win. Ugh. Okay, last question. How can I best embrace my sacred rage? How can I best embrace my sacred rage? It's not as hard to shuffle this deck as some people think. Although it can go everywhere, so I don't want to say it like that. Okay. How can I best embrace my sacred rage? I want to do some more. How can I best embrace it? A card for the energy that I need to better embrace my sacred rage. Six Swords. Like, I've got to know when to step in and step back out. I've got to know those boundaries. I've got to know that. I've got to get a depth finder, okay? This is what you put on boats to see how deep the water is, right? And where all the fishies are. And I love how these figures are flying. And they're holding each other with their 6 swords. They're somehow linked by their swords and doing this kind of skydiving synchronicity, synchronized flying, right? I love that. Because it makes me think of this kind of shamanistic way of connection. And you can move in and you can move out, and it's kind of like this amorphous instinctual ritual. 6 of Swords. I can embrace it by circulating it. I can circulate it and come into it and ease out of it and find those sweet spots in the water, right? If you think about the Rider-Waite-Smith, you know, we're trekking through, we're walking the path and trekking through the denseness, and we're finding the best path forward, you know? That's all we can really tell ourselves to do. And I'm getting called to pull one of my dirty offering cards, because this deck was a direct offering to the goddess herself, and I want to pull one of these. This is my own deck, but you know, so for whoever wants it, it's on Make Playing Cards, and I've got a walkthrough on the channel. I want to pull one of these and see what the goddess is telling me about sacred rage, divine feminine rage. And see what kind of magic is getting offered. Man, this shuffle's good. And I got the mini version. Love it when the shuffle's good. Okay. Oh, Spiral. I got Spiral. Which, look, doesn't it look like this? So I'm spiraling to embrace it. So this circulation here is, like I said, about moving in and about moving out. You cannot make this crap up. I swear. The cards. Okay? All the cards. So this one, it says Spiral right here. Spiral. Can't always see in the glare, but it's there. So this card is Spiral. This is my own art. And it was literally a dirty offering that the goddess made me offer her. So, thank you so much. Look at the backs of these. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, I'm not going to toot my own horn anymore, okay? So, thank you, Courtney, and Rochelle for collaborating. And thanks you for all the people that have done videos and shared their stories and shared their card spreads and a little bit about themselves. I see you and I appreciate you. And I'm sending every single one of you much love.